South Carolina is one of the most beautiful places in the USA, in my opinion. It is so rich in culture, having one of the oldest towns, Charleston, with its Rainbow Row, military towns, Paris Island military base, to Yorktown, to the Citadel. Then there is the Arthur Bridge, one of the longest cable-span bridges in the South, and still is one of the tallest structures to date in Charleston. Driving for miles with nothing to see but vast marshes, to the shoreline covered in oyster shells and the magnificent sunset, we loved it all. The nightlife is happening in the stacked little town with Old Charleston Jail right smack in the middle of it. We were there for it all. Charleston people are some of the friendliest we have ever come across, though there have been some dark pasts of slavery on its cotton plantations. There have been just as many heroic feats. Charleston and its surrounding areas are still beautiful places to visit, especially if you're in love with nature and the laid-back life as we are. And I know you won't be disappointed if you visit. But I have to mention that as a foodie, what we got for the price of $20 for food was very disappointing. So if you want to save money on food, bring your own. Welcome to part 3 and the last episode of our visit to South Carolina. If you love to see our beautiful country and learn about some of the amazing, sad, inspirational things that have happened here, then you have just landed on the right channel. We travel around the US and sometimes find ourselves in other countries too, where we try to go into the minds of our characters and tell their stories from their point of view. If you want to come with us, subscribe. That buys you a ticket to ride. And if at any time you feel the need to click the like button on this video, do it, do it, do it. Now come with us as we show you around the rest of South Carolina, in particular Charleston, Beaufort, St. Helens Island, Port Royal, Hollywood, Paris Island, the marshlands of Low Country, and more. I am your host, LT Bartek. Before I get into the stories, as we drove around, we noticed that many trees were just covered with this Spanish moss falling from them. And I was also quite interested as to why some of these trees were so weirdly shaped, especially in the graveyards. FYI, in the past, Spanish moss was used for building insulation, mulch, packing materials, and mattress stuffing, and later used as padding for car seats and fiber. Okay, moving right along. First, let us talk about the Arthur Ravenel Jr. Bridge, aka Cooper River Bridge, as the locals call it. The bridge was named after politician Arthur Ravenel. This bridge is located at the northeast end of downtown Charleston. Construction began in 2001 and was completed on July 16, 2005. This massive, iconic structure was built to replace two bridges. The John P. Grace Memorial Bridge opened in 1929 and the Silas N. Perlman Bridge, which was opened in 1966. It was made to connect downtown Charleston to Mount Pleasant. Now, Mount Pleasant is a place stacked with golf courses, beaches, shopping, restaurants, and rich historical sites. The cost of building the Cooper River Bridge was $700 million. One of the deciding factors was when a bridge inspector scored the safety of the Grace Bridge a 4 out of 100 because every time a car drives across it, it swayed. Arthur Ravenel campaigned hard for funding for a new bridge to satisfy the volume of traffic for a rapidly growing population, and eventually it was granted, and therefore that is the reason why the bridge was named after him. Now, this bridge is used by over 80,000 cars and by hundreds of bikes, cyclists, walkers, and runners daily. It is 2.5 miles long with a 1,546-foot cable stayed main span. Built to be high enough to accommodate commercial ship traffic passing underneath it, being 200 feet above the water, and strong enough to withstand natural disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes, like Charleston's 1886 earthquake, which reached a magnitude of 7.3 on the Richter scale, and the deadly Hurricane Hugo. Arthur also wanted to have the bridge built beautiful enough to capture the eyes of all of those who look upon it, like us that day, along with about 15 other cameramen and women watching this bridge and waiting for the lights to come alive and illuminate the two 600 feet high diamond towers as the sun set over the harbor. We were a little disappointed though by the lack of bright lights on the bridge, but that soon changed when we discovered why. The lack of bright lights on the bridge had to be modified to lessen the impact on migratory birds. We were lucky to have been there in March because between May and October, the lights are completely turned off during the loggerhead sea turtles nesting season. As you, my regular viewers, know, I have to try to see if there were any tragedies here. So this is what I found. During the building of the bridge, 19 workmen died from either being crushed by equipment or died in the process of pouring concrete. One man died trying to save his friend from being electrocuted, and the rest fell off the bridge and drowned. Since the opening of the Ravenel Bridge in 2005 and spanning to 2019, 32 people have committed suicide on this bridge. Rarely has any of these jumpers survived, but if any do survive the fall, the job of the Coast Guard responders is to dive in as a last case scenario. If the person is still alive, he or she will have to climb aboard the boat on the back deck, which sits about 6 inches above the water level, or the jumper can choose to swim ashore while the Coast Guard escorts them. Now on to the Old Charleston Jail. The Old Charleston Jail was in operation between 1802 and 1939. This jail was used to hold many Union and Confederate officers during the Civil War, as well as high seas, pirates, and Lavinia Fisher. Lavinia Fisher is alleged was the first serial killer. She was born in 1793 and later died on February 18, 1820. But this is being disputed because some researchers are saying that Lavinia did not kill anyone, but she was married to John Fisher and they were both members of a band of robbers. She was convicted of highway robbery and sent to the old jail in Charleston. She and her husband were sentenced to death while their co-conspirators were let go. It is said that after the sentencing, they were put in jails that were not in maximum security, so they used the opportunity to escape. They gathered bed linens and tied them together, making a rope, but the cloth broke with John escaping to freedom. but Lavinia was still stuck inside the jail. John came back, not wanting to leave Lavinia behind, and gave himself up. Authorities, not wanting another escape, beefed up security, making it impossible for them to attempt any further escape. John, knowing he was about to die, turned his life over to God. At the hanging, with over 2,000 people coming to watch, John still proclaimed his innocence, but messed up by asking the crowd for forgiveness. Lavinia, on the other hand, with her hope dashed to pieces after seeing that she was really facing death, shouted to the crowd, "If any of you have a message for the devil, tell me now, for I shall be seeing him shortly." Then she jumped off the stand and killed herself. Visitors to the old jail have said that they still see her ghost walking the halls. Another prisoner that was incarcerated at the old Charleston jail was Denmark Vesey. Using the information about Denmark, I will tell his story as it presented itself to me. 32-year-old Denmark looked again at the paper in his hand. It showed he had won the lottery, and his blood ran cold through his veins. His mouth felt dry and his knees were wobbling. He turned to find a chair to sit on and fell into it just in time. He could no longer hold back the tears that flowed from his eyes like the waters of the Stono River, and he cried away the pain until the joy of what was happening flowed into his being. Composed, and days later, he used the money to buy his freedom. He was no longer a slave, he was a free man. But this was such a strange feeling, having been born into slavery, the property of Captain Joseph Vesey. Denmark worked hard but could not gather enough money to buy his wife and children's freedom. A carpenter by trade and a leader of the Christian folks, he became active in the Second Presbyterian Church in 1818. He was one of the founding members along with some white clergy. He was also one of the founding fathers of the African Methodist Episcopal, AME. His church grew to over 1,848 members, and using his influence, he planned a revolt to free his family, the thousands of slaves from the cotton plantation in Charleston and the nearby cities. Denmark gathered some trusted men and women who had decided to follow him, and it is said that the plan was to kill the slaveholders in Charleston, liberate the slaves, and sail to the newly independent Black Republic of Haiti for refuge. But someone ratted him out, and he and his followers were arrested and sent to the old Charleston jail before they could execute the plan. In the end, Vesey and 5 slaves were judged and found guilty by the secret proceedings of a city-appointed court and were hanged on July 2, 1822 at the jail. Vesey was 55 years old. Later, 30 of his followers were tried and sentenced and hanged. Another group of his followers, including his son, was convicted of conspiracy and deported. His church was destroyed and his ministers were expelled from the city. On to the next story. Did you know that the USS Yorktown CV-10 was a pretty remarkable aircraft carrier in the US Navy? It was actually the 10th one to serve, and it was built in just 16 and a half months in Virginia. The ship was initially going to be called the Bonhomme Richard, but it was renamed in honor of the Yorktown CV-5, which sank during the Battle of Midway in 1942. During World War II, the Yorktown played a significant role in the Pacific Offensive against Japan and even earned a Presidential Unit Citation and 11 battle stars. In the 1950s, the ship was modified to operate jet aircraft, and it served as an anti-submarine aircraft carrier during the Vietnam War, earning an additional 5 battle stars. After being decommissioned in 1970, The Yorktown was later towed to Charleston in 1975 to become the centerpiece of the Patriots Point Naval and Marine Museum. Oh, and one more interesting fact, the Yorktown was a ship that recovered the Apollo 8 astronauts and capsule in December of 1968. The Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina is a public senior military college that was established back in 1842, making it one of 6 senior military colleges in the United States. The college has 18 academic departments split into 5 schools, offering a wide range of 31 majors and 57 minors. The Citadel's military program consists of cadets pursuing bachelor's degree who live on campus, while the non-military programs offer 12 undergraduate degrees and 26 graduate degrees, as well as evening and online programs with 7 online graduate degrees, 3 online undergraduate degrees, and 3 certificate programs. It's pretty impressive that the Citadel's South Carolina Corps of Cadet numbers 2,300 and is one of the largest uniformed bodies in the U.S., while around 1,350 non-cadet students are enrolled in Citadel's graduate college pursuing undergraduate and graduate degrees. Also, around 9% of the corps and 22% of the overall enrollment are women, and 15% of the corps and 23% of the total enrollment are racial minorities. If you're curious, about half of the Citadel's cadet enrollment is from South Carolina, while cadets come from 45 states and 23 foreign countries. Okay, so now that we have come to the end of the last episode of our trip to South Carolina, this is part 3. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, give it a like and subscribe. I would love and appreciate it if you would follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The links are on my website, Somestoriesofmine.com, and in the description below. As well as reminder to subscribe and like this video. Feel free to leave a comment, and we thank you for watching. Take care of yourself and each other. Love you. Bye. Oh, you're still here. If so, here's some bonus footage. Enjoy.